The U.S. may have a secret UFO retrieval program. Those are just some of the incredible claims laid out by the Pentagon UFO whistleblower David Grush. Now, among the claims from Grush is that the government has a non-human aircraft in its possession, which has been kept secret from both Congress and the public. He recently filed a whistleblower complaint claiming that he gave classified proof to Congress and the intelligence community inspector general. But while News Nation has confirmed Grush's credentials, we have not seen nor verified the alleged proof that he claims to have given to investigators. Here to help me break down some of these claims, Bryce Zabel. It's good to see him again, filmmaker and host of the Need to Know podcast. Bryce, thanks for being here.
Hi, Natasha. It's good to be here, and it's such an important day. Thank you.
We know the Inspector General of the Intelligence Service has said that Grush's complaint is credible. What is your reaction to the whistleblower story? Do you think that Grush is telling the truth here?
Well, I've met Dave Grush twice. I was there for your Need to Know, or rather your News Nation interview, and also the day before we talked to him. I think he is credible, but let's set the table for this just a little bit. Last December, the House and the Senate both passed the National Defense Authorization Act, and it was signed by President Biden, and it involved actually providing the language for protecting whistleblowers on the subject of UAP or UFOs. And he is the first person to come forward. And as you pointed out, he's a very credible witness, and people are really going to see that in the special that comes up tonight. So I think Dave Grush is telling the truth as he knows it. The issue of proof is a different one because obviously he was allowed by the Inspector General to tell this story, but obviously the Defense Department isn't letting him walk out of the Pentagon with a piece of spacecraft or a photo of an alien. So that's going to have to be what the Congress actually does now. They're going to have to get into this, Natasha. They're going to have to do the investigation.
I think one of the most shocking claims the whistleblower made perhaps was about humans being killed by non-human intelligence. Let's take a listen to that quickly together.
Have human beings been hurt or killed by a non-human intelligence?
While I can't get into the specifics because that would reveal certain U.S. classified operations, I was briefed by a few individuals on the program that there were malevolent events like that.
No, I'm scared. People have just heard you say non-humans may well have murdered human beings.
That seems to be the case at one point, yeah.
What is your reaction to this?
Well, it's certainly shocking. I was as shocked as you probably are when you first heard that. But the man's credentials are excellent, and it is clear that over the last 80 years, many, many thousands of Americans and people from around the rest of the planet have seen things that cannot be explained, that are anomalous. And these include pilots and police officers and military people. So there's no doubt that there's something going on. Our own government has told us that. The question is, what are the details of it? Well, David Grush was a person who was so trusted that he was one of the people that worked on the presidential daily briefing, and he was even trusted enough to courier it to the White House. So this is a man that you have to take seriously. Now the hard work has to begin, as I was saying. And I think that the one thing that we have going for us as a nation right now is in a deeply divided time. Your previous stories made that very clear. Here is an issue that has the beginnings of bipartisanship. The Senate Intelligence Committee that's taken a lead on a lot of this involves Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York, a Democrat, and Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, a Republican. And they probably don't see eye to eye on most things, but they sure do on the subject of the government needing to come clean and tell the people what it actually knows. Now, the idea that people have died, possibly he was also referring to the fact that some people who have come in contact with the craft itself have received some kind of burns and radiation effects. But it's clear, if you listen to Dave Grush, he's saying there's more than one kind of non-human intelligence out there that we're in touch with, and that one of them he feels could be described as malevolent. So it's a sobering and somber moment for us. But I am looking forward to your audience at News Nation seeing him for the hour special you're doing and really looking at this man and taking their own measure of him and asking themselves, do I think he's telling the truth? And I think as they listen to him, as I have for a couple of days when I did meet him, I think he comes across as an honest man. That's not the end of the story, but it certainly is the beginning of it.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.
So you're absolutely sure that the materials that these craft are made of are clearly not of this earth?
Yeah, they're sophisticatedly engineered, certainly not by humans.
That was UFO whistleblower David Grush revealing in a News Nation exclusive that he believes the government has been covering up the existence of alien life. But can he be believed? Let's bring in Bryce Zabel. He's a writer, producer, investigative journalist, covers UFOs, actually does a podcast with the guy doing the interview with Grush. Bryce, good to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. And, I really want to call out how great I thought your introduction was, because it's not about little green men anymore. It's not about just lights in the sky. But you're proving right now with this coverage that News Nation is doing, and yourself, Chris, is that the stigma for this whole topic needs to go away. We need to take it on like any other story and get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, I mean, the part that I find unacceptable is if they have something that proves or disproves this, they should tell us, because I just think it's malfeasance. I don't even think it's misfeasance. I don't even think it's simple negligence. I don't even think it's discretion. They are intentionally doing something that has 3/4 of the population interested. And if they could debunk that, they should. That's transparency. Now, let's do our own practice of it here.
Sure.
What do you know about Grush, and why should we trust him?
Well, I know about Grush because my partner in that podcast, Ross Coulthart, the man who's doing the interview, is someone I've been in contact with, obviously, on a lot of these issues and a lot of the sources that he's had over the time that we've known each other. So I've seen the Grush story coming. I did spend a couple of days with Dave Grush in May. The day before you guys actually taped the News Nation interview, and I was there for the News Nation interview. And I think Grush is the real deal, and I look forward to people putting as much attention on checking him out as they can, because I think he checks out.
Wasn't fired, doesn't have beef that we know about. The government hasn't come forward and said he was fired or has beef. And in fact, he is telling us the truth as far as we know about going to DOD for pre-publication clearance. And he was told not to talk about certain things. Is that your understanding as well?
Well, that's what it's called the DOPSA document, and it basically allows him to talk about certain things. Now, it's a dangerous game for a person like Dave Grush, because that puts a line there, and he has to, as he's answering questions for Ross or yourself in the future, he has to wonder whether he's going over that line or not. So he's got, he's obviously being watched by the government to make sure that he stays on the right side of what they're allowing him to talk about. But I think it is pretty wild that the government has said, go ahead, Dave, tell your story. And that's exactly what he's doing. And it's interesting. I'm not sure people even understand this. In addition to all the credentials this guy has, he actually worked on the presidential daily briefing. He was one of the guys trusted to literally walk that briefing over to the White House. This is not some guy who, worked in the government 30 years ago who's coming forward with a YouTube video. This is a guy who was deeply involved in the intelligence community of the U.S. government up until April of this year. And he's telling a story that, as you've pointed out, is pretty radical. And yet there's a lot of reason to believe that it's true.
Now, another contextual tool is corroboration. You're
Yes.
saying, separate from the guy, what he is talking about are things you have heard from other sources that are not Grush related.
Absolutely. Listen, I started as a screenwriter looking into UFOs, and so I did a lot of research on it. And I've heard most of the things that he's talking about, and I've seen people talk about it. I've read about them. So you can actually think about this as a secret that's been in plain sight for quite a while. What's different is that we actually have an insider with the merit and with the credentials of Dave Grush, who's willing to put his career and his own personal safety on the line to tell us about it. So I think it's kind of a heroic thing that he's doing. And I think it may very well turn out when we read the history books of the future, they're going to pinpoint this very time right now that we're in, and say, this is where things began to turn and people began to really take it seriously and get to the bottom of it.
Hey, thank you for watching. Please go to newsnationnow.com, newsnationnow.com, and you can find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button down below. Then you will get more of News Nation's fact-driven coverage.
Now, an update to the story we brought you on Monday regarding that whistleblower documenting what he says is the evidence that U.S. recovered alien spacecrafts and beings, despite being told for years all of that was a conspiracy theory. Independent journalist Michael Schellenberger has spoken to a number of military and intel contractors who say now that the U.S. is, in fact, in possession of 12 or more alien spacecraft. Schellenberger also writes that the reason the Pentagon's new program for studying UFOs has not discovered any verifiable information is because, quote, they may not want to verify it. Joining us now, Bryce Zabel. He's the host of the Need to Know podcast, an investigative journalist who covers these issues. He was also present for the initial interview with the whistleblower, David Grush, and has spent some time with him as well. Bryce, now, why might the Pentagon not want to verify this information? This is on a night where so many people are raising questions about the veracity and the trustworthiness of all of our key institutions of government. But why would they want to verify it?
Well, the information that we're not alone has always been assumed to be a destabilizing kind of thing, Laura. So on one level, they could simply say, we're just not ready to deal with this. Let's continue with the political stuff, the back and forth on your show tonight. I mean, this is a pretty interesting night to be talking about this because the politics of the nation are, on the front page or the front, the top of the show. But at the same time, if this is true, what whistleblower Dave Grush has said, then it's the biggest news story of all time ever. And so I think if there is an attempt to try to come clean on this, it's been around for 80 years. I don't know that they have a good plan for it, but they're going to probably have to get one.
How important is this, though? Again, getting back to the core point that we've been making all show long tonight.
Sure.
That we need to believe that our government actually represents our best interests. And unless there is a specific, incredible national security reason not to release certain information, that after decades and decades of questions and sightings and
Sure.
firsthand witnesses here, how do you not come forward and say this is what we have and this is what we're still investigating? How do you not at least do that?
That's a great question that could have been asked for the last 12 presidential administrations. I will say this, though. This is the first time where this issue has been revealing itself to be actually a bipartisan issue. You've had the Senate Intelligence Committee very interested in this, and two of the key players in that are Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who is a Democrat, and Senator Marco Rubio, who's a Republican. And they probably don't agree on many things, but they do agree that we should look into this issue of unidentified anomalous phenomena. So more power to them, and that is exactly what's going to happen now. These very statements that Dave Grush has made have already been made in classified session before at least two committees in Congress, where he's testified for over 11 hours about this, and he's provided names, dates, programs, locations. So he's basically challenged the Senate and the House. If you want to know more about this, I'll tell you where to go look for spacecraft. So I can't wait for this to happen.
This is unbelievable. Bryce, thank you so much. And now to